All right, good morning here from South Africa. We once again here doing another leadership webinar. The whole purpose is still the same, to inspire others, to inspire greatness in others, and truly just to use this platform during this difficult time, COVID-19, and just to create an awareness and for purpose and create hope. That's really the whole idea of this. I've been really fortunate to have some really inspirational speakers that are just pouring their hearts out and just giving as much information and inspiration to others. And today's no different. I'm really excited with the speaker today, a really good friend of mine. If you are involved in any of the rugby circles, whether it's coaching or as a player or administration, then you certainly know this man. You know the man that he is. So without further ado, I'd really like to welcome my great friend here, Jeremy McLaren. How are you, buddy?
Hello, Gabby. I'm well, and you? Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to this conversation.
Yeah, so if you don't know who Jeremy is, obviously I've been very fortunate. I work with him on a daily basis. I see him as a massive inspiration. We obviously feed off a lot of each other with leadership and that sort of thing. So I'm loving what he has to say today. A big man in the rugby circles. If I can just give a quick little overview of his career, and it's about 30 pages long, so I try to trim it and do as much justification as possible. So Jeremy started off his coaching career at Gelofte Primary School and High School. There he started the Gelofte Night Series, which is still running today, 10 years strong. He actually won that before in his coaching career whilst there with the primary school and the high school. Later, he joined Kloof High School, which he said he thoroughly enjoyed. He worked under a great leadership staff and the staff at the school. He had much success, winning the Derby Day with 3 consecutive years. As a Kloof old boy, I'd say well done. It's a massive result against Hillcrest High School. In your final year at Kloof, you were appointed as the Grand Como assistant coach. You later then left and you joined Glenwood High School. In your first year, you coached the under-16s to much success, making it in the top 5 in the country. You later went that same year, your first year at Glenwood, you joined the first team coaching staff and you went to Japan, where you won the Sanex World Schools Festival. This year, you were also appointed as the head coach of the KZN Grand Como side that narrowly lost in the final against the Lions. Lastly, now today, you obviously moved across to Westville Boys High School. That's obviously where I got to meet you. And you are currently coaching the first team rugby side for the past few years. You've also been selected as the KZN Craven Week head coach, and with much success that you have had in the past. Obviously, you are the current KZN Craven Week coach today. One of the highlights that you mentioned, and I can say I was there, and it is obviously your win against Uffies away from home with the Westville Boys High School first team side, which is an incredible result. Other than schoolboy rugby, you've been involved in coaching varsity college for the past 5 years. And you have also been invited to SA school camps, where you obviously get involved with the coaching and selection, etc. You're currently competing your level 3 rugby coaching course. And yeah, you're obviously an inspiration to many boys that you've coached. You've obviously influenced many lives through that, through obviously the game of rugby, and certainly a lot of coaches. So again, thank you, Jeremy, for giving up your time. I really appreciate you doing this. I'm going to go straight into the first question. So let's just take COVID-19 now and just put it aside. Obviously, South African rugby is in a really good place. Obviously, with the great results of our Springbok rugby side winning the World Cup last year, Siya Kolisi and the boys. I mean, the whole story of how they did it, where we went for the last 3 years into world champions, #1 in the world, is really inspirational and gives a lot of hope to young schoolboys and coaches in South Africa who are using rugby as a platform to create some sort of a success as Siya Kolisi and the boys. You are very much involved in schoolboy rugby. You're involved in provincial rugby, in club rugby. How do you see the future of South African rugby, both from a player's perspective and a coaching perspective?
Gav, yeah, thank you for the introduction. I think it's a blessing to be part of something like this in your life, where you could work with men and young men. Gabby, yeah, it's probably such a great question. First of all, I think Rassie and Siya did a phenomenal job with the rest of the Springbok management staff and also the players. I think no one really gave us a fair chance in that final, where everyone thought England would be the favourite. But what they don't know is that when South Africans play for a purpose, and when they really got their minds set on something, we're quite a dangerous nation. And I don't see it any different from now. I think if we look at our president as sort of the way he spoke to us every time he gave us feedback on where we would stand. I think he's such a phenomenal leader to inspire us through this difficult time. And I think it was probably not easy for us as humans in an uncertain time. We like and we love to know what the future holds for us. And I think that probably just brought us back to realizing that we can't control it all. But from a player's perspective, I think that it's important for young players to stay positive through this difficult time, and to still train hard, and realize there's still opportunities through universities and a club setup. I think for coaches, I think majority of creative coaches would have probably maybe learned a bit more about themselves in this time. I think in my own life as I got to calm down a little bit from the normal rat race and started reading. I'm currently reading 3 books, and also enrolled for 5 small little courses. So I think it's important to stay positive and know that we still have a future. It is uncertain at the moment. We don't know what will happen with our season. As far as I know, we won't have a season left, but I think we've always said to our players that, remember, life is not just about rugby.
No, brilliantly said. Thanks, Jeremy. And I'm gonna go throw you now quickly, while you're on that topic slightly there. I'm going to throw you a little bit of a difficult question now. Obviously, now we fast forward, we're in this pandemic, we're in this COVID-19. And it's obviously had a big effect on many aspects of the world. I mean, not just, business, everything, the daily lives of every human beings. And one of the biggest impacts is obviously sport, and rugby in particular. Something I want to ask you, and I think this is probably a very, if I can ask you just to speak straight from your heart, is certainly, what advice can you give to schoolboy rugby players in particular? Obviously some of them have put a lot of effort. They've trained really hard for this year. Some of them would have had goals and aspirations to maybe play for the first team of a school. Some of them would have liked to achieve certain amount of caps or tries. They have their own little goals. And some of the players certainly would have had provincial hopes or aspirations of making Craven Week side this year. And all of a sudden that just disappears. What advice can you give them, in this difficult time for the future, during this COVID-19, and how they can achieve those goals, etc., when everything's just been taken away from them?
Gav, if I can start with the reality is that if we look at our team at Westville at the moment, we really had, as coaches, we had high hopes for this team, and I think it's also with the amount of effort from our coaching staff, from our conditioning side, from the boys themselves. So yes, I think we had a goal to set ourselves in one of the top positions as a schoolboy team this season. And the reality is I'll actually look forward to the Craven Week side as well, because I honestly believe in our province we really had a phenomenal group of grade 12 boys, and so many of them were last year in grade 11, and they would have been more experienced going into Craven Week this year. But again, the reality is life is not always the way we want it. And I'm just going to talk from my heart here, and I know it's hard when we're in this situation to try and think of where's my next opportunity. And like you rightly said, that so many boys that worked hard saw this as an opportunity to either maybe get a contract from a union, get a bursary from a university, and now all of a sudden that is just shattered. I think, like I say, I stood back in my own personal life, questioning the same questions, but I think it also gave me, and I think for so many people, maybe just a bit of a recap of your life, and just realizing that it's a good place to just let the Father be back in our hearts and give us a good indication of where we're going to go. We don't know at the moment, but one thing I would like to share is this. In Romans 4, there's a part where Abram he just puts all his trust in God, and God made Abram, that was a nobody in the world, and he really made him a leader of so many nations. And the nice thing, what stood out for me there is that Abram dared to trust God, trust him in things like, for example, now we don't have a clue what's going to happen, but he still trusts to know that God can change anything, any situation for them. So, and obviously, it was also a hopeless time in that time. So again, I don't think, although in our lives it's the first time we've been part of a massive global thing like this, but in the history of God's people, in the history of the love that God has for his nation, I don't think we should be down and out. I think we should really trust that there's still a lot of hope. And yes, like I say, it's maybe sometimes easier to say it, but I really believe that these young men have still got a good future ahead of them.
No, thanks, Jeremy. And I think, I've been, as I said before, I've been fortunate to coach under you when I coached the seconds at Westville Boys. And, and I'm hoping there are a lot of other coaches similar, but obviously, and I'll touch just now on team culture, but I think what's important is a lot of the time what you are instilling in the boys are values that are far bigger and greater than the actual game. And you're really using the platform of rugby to teach these boys values like character, like humility, respect, etc. So, yeah, I think that now is going to be far more important. And I think the boys are now going to realize in a difficult time like this that that's going to take them to another level. And rugby is a beautiful God-given talent, as you said, and they got that platform. Unfortunately, not this year. But those values that you instill the boys are phenomenal. I think that's definitely something that you must take your hat off, and your coaching team, Jubs, etc., at the school and wherever else in your Craven Week setup. So, yeah, if I can give you some credit there. Just quickly, if I can add on to that question quickly, a matric boy, for example, and I think they'll really be sitting back watching this, just trying to get some advice from you through your expertise. A matric boy that was obviously hoping to maybe try and use Craven Week, for example, as a platform to go into professional rugby, and now this year cannot do that. What advice can you give him? What can he do now this year? It was his final year of rugby to maybe try and get a professional contract or get into the setup of a club rugby, etc.
Gary, I think the reality is the question is actually the same throughout every year. And also being part of varsity college, you realize that, unfortunately, I think the sad part is that not all the talent in our country has actually got a fair opportunity. Just obviously from a financial point of view, you can only give an X amount of contracts at a union. Universities also just have a X amount of bursaries that they could give. But I've seen at club level that, if with all due respect, if I can say it, average players just taking opportunity to work hard, to believe in themselves, and sometimes just a little bit of a late developer. Left school without playing any provincial, worked hard at club, and somehow got into a provincial under-19 setup or provincial under-21 setup. So, and if I may say this, I think our boys know that working hard has become a natural thing for them, and also knowing that life is more than just the game. It's a beautiful game that we learn so many aspects of ourselves. When it's tough, how do we get up from that? And obviously through pain we also learn experience, and I think to give them advice is that I know this is tough. I mean, like I say, I actually watched some of the previous years Craven Week games again, and it hurts you thinking that you're not going to have it this year. But Yeah, it just gives you as a human being time to regroup and realize there's hope. There is literally hope, and for these boys there is hope to keep working hard. And that I know, for example, our union at the Sharks are working hard and seeing how they can tie a lot of the current talent in our province to stay here. So my advice would be keep training hard, find a club, find a university if you do leave the province, and yeah, I mean through our culture that we created, you can really set a great future for yourself to still play a provincial team anywhere.
No, great advice. Thanks, Jeremy. And I think a lot of boys will take heart from that, especially coming from you. Let's just shift our focus now from the players to the coaches. Obviously there are a lot of young, inspiring coaches that look up to you and obviously one day want to be coaching a Craven Week side like you. And I know that you are very big, or your philosophy is big on team culture. You're very big on leadership within a team. You have a lot of morning seminars I've seen with your boys where you do leadership skills, etc. What advice can you give to a young, inspiring coach who wants to, get the balance of both between the skills components, the mental side of the game, as well as the team culture development to get that right? How do we get the balance right to get a successful team? What advice can you give to young, inspiring coaches?
Yeah, well, thanks for that question, Gabby. I think it is such an important one. And yeah, just to take it a few years back, I remember I always dreamt of being a provincial coach as well. And yeah, not to even think I would have got to a Craven Week setup. And I think that is where I would start is that you have to dream, you have to believe, you have to want to grow. And I know a lot of young coaches that is their goal to maybe just a Grand Como team or whatever. But I think that the most important thing that I always was blessed with, that I felt the Lord put on my heart, was that I actually never try to feel pressure from winning. I know your marketing aspect and results. Yeah, it does really make it easier. But I felt that I always had a calmness in me to find the player before I find the result. And I think that is the most important thing: is never ever sacrifice your relationships with your players for a result. And what I mean by that is that when you're under pressure, you start taking it out on your players. The reality is that whatever age group you coach, they're human beings, and a player will never purposely make a mistake to spite the coach. He's going to be in the spur of the moment, make a massive wrong decision. But that is where I honestly believe coaches should coach their teams to make those decisions for themselves. Don't keep spoon feeding them when they find themselves in a very difficult situation that they don't know how to do it. And I think that is the most important thing: is coach the athlete to think for himself. And then again, I mean, we've been talking about the sort of ways to coach your team. Is obviously there's the skills, the mental, but then there's the one that reaches the heart. And I'll be honest, I've seen kids win games that's not the most talented team, but it's those that know that you as a coach believe in them. And I think that is probably the most important thing. And I think in a society and in the times we live now, is that not all our boys are fortunate to have great father figures. And I think that is what I enjoy. I literally enjoy the game. I enjoy the technical setup and the technical part of the game. But what I love the most is seeing how a young man's walking like this and starting to walk like this with pride and knowing who he is. And that will be my biggest advice to any coach, to realize that you're going to work with boys that's broken, and let them find meaning in life, and that's why for me rugby is such a blessing that we can reach a lot of young men.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Jeremy. And I think, that is so important. I mean, the amount that you can, if you give the boys that trust and you believe in a boy, it's amazing what they actually can do. So, to get the right combination, and you certainly have that, and to hear that from you to other coaches, thank you. I think a lot of people take a lot of positives out of that. Just to link on that, you've obviously had some great captains in your coaching career. How important have these players been to the success of your team? I recently read an article that actually said that Eddie Jones said that you should have at least 10 leaders on a field at a given time if you want to win any sort of Rugby World Cup or any sort of big victory. Leadership's a massive part of any sport, particularly in rugby. So how important has the captain been in the success of your teams, and how important are leaders, not even the particular captain? If you look at the Springboks of 2019, Siya Kolisi, a phenomenal captain, but there were great leadership in other players on that field. How important have you seen that at schoolboy, varsity, provincial rugby in your profession?
Yeah, Gabby, I think sort of you find yourself in seasons where you get a feel of players choosing a captain, and then there's other times where you as a coach feel that it's important that you might step in and select that leader. But I agree 100% that it's important to have more than just one leader. And the reality is that some talented players could struggle to take a leadership role in leading the team. And that's why I think it's really important to have your different leaders. And that is where you create that off the field. You create it where it's important, where in your team meetings, certain guys are they express themselves easier than someone else, maybe not with the confidence, but that player with not so much confidence in a team meeting might be a creative guy in just creating a playlist for us. So I think every single player in the team has got such a phenomenal part to play. First of all, I think you need to be a leader in your own position, to take charge of it, to know that this is my role. And then obviously your captain, your vice captain. If I take, for example, our captain last year, I mean, just a natural leader. And that is when you successful as a team, having those natural leaders. And just looking at our team this season, I mean, there's so many kids that could be our captain this year, and that's why I think it's so important to know that you give everyone a specific little role. But when we either behind the poles or we're on the halfway line, that you have one or two good inputs, and we keep going. I mean, it's also dangerous when you do have a strong group of leaders and everyone wants to say something. For example, we have our captain and our vice captain, then we'll have an attack captain. And our attack captain is normally our fly. So although Tian is a little junior in the sense of a grade 11, he's our attack captain. He needs to communicate to the forwards, where are we going? And obviously for Tian, it's easy when you do have a Mambo next to him that could help him and guide him a little bit. And then obviously line-out captain, attack captain, and a defensive captain. So I think it's really important to make everyone feel worthwhile. I think I always talk about primary school rugby, where certain coaches would choose the biggest oak as a number 8 and the quickest oak as a fly-off, and those two control the game. What about the other 13 oaks around them? And for us, it's important that everyone has got the freedom to express themselves, but it's also important to know that when we're a bit in the water and it's tough, that you got a great leader to get your whole team out of that to be able to go again.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. If I could just add to that question, I mean, you coaching at a high level, obviously you got a lot of pressure and a lot of expectation. You mentioned it earlier, like marketing, the win and loss ratio. You got parents, etc., that are on your shoulders. You know, you got a lot that has to be done in a short week in terms of doing line-out calls, all your set pieces, exit strategies, etc., etc. Where do you find the time, and how do you find the time to grow these leaders? Where do you find the time to help a captain, for example, to be a captain who's given this role or responsibility for the first time? I mean, what sort of things, maybe you can give some advice to coaches. Where do you find the time to help these men to grow their leadership skills whilst having to deal with all these other pressures that you deal with every single day?
Gabby, yeah, again, I honestly believe if the game is your passion and boys are your passion, I think you always do have time. And I think it's also a process. It doesn't just happen in year one, or it doesn't just happen in a few months. I mean, I take, for example, the massive work you've also done in our leadership at school. I think it's such a strong leadership of boys in our school at the moment. And I think I also think it's a lifestyle from you as a coach, where they see how you live and they see how you present yourself. And I think that is how you started. And again, making them believe in themselves. Like if I take, for example, a Stefan, if I tell you that that is such a phenomenal player when it gets to lineouts, that from day one I said to him, Steph, please bring back last year's lineout setup for us, and you're going to coach it to the players. And I remember in the time the grade 12s were writing exams, we had the grade 8s with us, and I tried to get hold of Stefan because I wanted Stefan to come and coach our lineouts to these boys. And I think that is the most important thing is that, and funny enough, we actually started in our group now that our players send us coaching videos. I actually started this little competition where the winner will get an X amount, second and third prize. So it's quite nice to see those videos coming in and what they coaching us as coaches. I've actually learned from some of those videos as well. So I think the biggest thing about leadership is take the lead, but then to give it back to them to then coach as well. And I think that is what we've had. I mean, if I look at a phenomenal guy like AB, our head boy, I mean, I actually get goosebumps every time that young phenomenal leader stands up and he speaks, and credit to you as well for allowing them to express themselves. So I think leadership is when you create an environment for them to feel comfortable, and then at a stage you say, okay, the ball's in your court now, you take leadership, you tell us what you think would work, and because eventually they're on the field, we're not on the field. So the more they take charge to think as coaches as well, the better. And I must say, if you look at a Stanley and a Andrew, some of those players that we coach in our first year, they all came back as coaches. And I think coach players to bring the best out of them, but to also then know that I can also be a coach just from listening and just from knowing that I'm taking the responsibility to give back as well.
No, great. Thanks, Coach. And I think that's certainly, that is really important. What you say there is giving them the responsibility and the confidence. And boys, it's amazing what these young boys can actually do when you do that. So yeah, thank you and well done for doing that. Lastly, I just want to throw another question at you. And this is in terms of, obviously a lot of boys have aspirations of being a Springbok or being a professional rugby player. And certainly that is one of your roles to try and get them onto that platform. But we know that to play sports at a high level is not going to last for the rest of your life. So academics is important. Studies are important. You know, what advice can you give to young players that to give them the understanding that the balance between obviously your sport and your academics is important? I mean, I work with you on a daily basis, and we work with these young men in and out of the classroom and helping them with their goals set and etc. So, you know, what advice can you give to coaches, to schools, and obviously to the players so that they understand the importance of the balance?
Gabby, yeah, first of all, yeah, I think what you've done with us as coaches to assist the academic staff in either being a format with them is already a good example that from a Westville sporting, a good sporting with a lot of good coaches to be able to help the academic staff is already a good example that we show to the boys as well. And you know what, to actually just answer that question in one word, I would say COVID-19. I think as teachers, as leaders in the school, we've always been saying to the boys that academics are so important. And I mean, we've always made it clear that if you late at practice because you went to catch up on work or extra lesson, we're happy with that. And because it is so important, because I think what's happened to the world now is and again, we've always said to players that academics is important, academics is important, academics is important. And I think this is probably the hardest life lesson that we all face. This is that we can't just put our focus on sport. And again, I think they probably would have learned out of this situation that our season is done, but the academics is still so important. And I think you cannot argue that academics is really, really important.
Yeah, look, Coach, I really want to thank you again for giving up your time. You know, they say that a good coach can change a game plan, and a great coach changes a life. And I certainly see that in your philosophy. Like I said, I work with you on a daily basis, which I'm very fortunate. And I've coached, you know, with you before, and obviously in your setup where you head in the rugby at Westville Boys. And yeah, you can honestly see that you're big on the culture, on the leadership, and you invest in more than just the rugby, but you invest in the lives of the boys. If I can just share some stories, I mean, every single day when the boys are in actual school time, during breaks, whenever they have a free time, I often see them in your office, and there you are still giving up your time and investing in these boys. So on behalf of them, I want to say thank you. And certainly from a coach's perspective, thank you for what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. I think it's so important that we have coaches like this that aren't just, you know, result orientated. You know, if we can get all this culture right, if we can get instilling values in these boys, then winning becomes easy for them, I think. So, Coach, again, thank you for giving up your time. Thank you for giving up your words of wisdom. And thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah, Gabby, first of all, what an honor and what a privilege. It's always nice to speak to you, and I really appreciate the nice words. And I think it's a massive team effort from a guy like you running our leaders. It just makes it easier for us as well in the sporting field. So I think as a Westville family, we're doing a great job, and I think we'll get through this and we'll be better and stronger from this. And I can't wait to be back with everyone. I think as much as we have all these meetings on Zoom, the natural and the physical touches are still the most important thing, of a handshake and just having a cup of coffee. So I really appreciate it, and I know we'll be stronger from this, and God will lead us through all of this. And thank you so much for this time, Gabby. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks, Coach, and we hope to see you on the rugby field soon.